Claire sprawled across the living room couch, her phone in hand, clad in nothing but a faded tank top and a pair of underwear. She had the air conditioner cranked to its maximum, an effort to beat the oppressive summer heat. Claire's relaxed demeanor radiated confidence, the kind that came from years of knowing exactly who she was. She had grown accustomed to her stepson, Jake, treating her as if she were a fixture in the house, a harmless presence to ignore or tease. Jake, however, had other ideas today. From the hallway, he peeked into the living room, spotting her scrolling through her phone with an absent smile. Perfect. His eyes darted toward the bucket of water he had painstakingly balanced on the top of the slightly ajar door to his bedroom. He stifled a chuckle, imagining the sheer chaos that would erupt when Claire walked in. She yawned, tossing her phone onto the couch and stretching languidly. "Jake!" she called out. He froze. "Yeah? What's that noise coming from your room? Is it your hamster again? I swear, that thing's plotting world domination with the racket it makes." Jake grinned to himself. Probably. You could check, though." Claire raised an eyebrow, smirking. "You think I'm your maid? I'm already wearing less than I'd prefer to deal with your nonsense." "Just saying, it might need your delicate touch," Jake said, doing his best to suppress laughter. Claire rolled her eyes. "Fine, but if I find a dead hamster, you're digging the tiny grave." Jake hurriedly ducked around the corner, positioning himself to witness the prank unfold. He held his breath as Claire approached the door, her hips swaying slightly, completely unaware of the impending splash. Reaching the door, she pushed it open casually. Time slowed as the bucket wobbled precariously. Jake's heart raced in anticipation, until everything went spectacularly wrong. The bucket missed Claire entirely, hitting the doorframe instead. The momentum sent the water cascading backward, soaking Jake where he stood. He sputtered as the icy deluge drenched him from head to toe, leaving his shirt clinging to his chest and water dripping from his hair. Claire spun around at the noise, startled but unharmed. She took in the sight of Jake standing there, drenched and shivering, and immediately burst into laughter. "Oh my God!" she gasped, clutching her sides. "Was that supposed to hit me? You absolute idiot!" Jake wiped water from his face, trying to maintain his dignity. "It wasn't supposed to go like that." "Well, it didn't. And now you're the one looking like a wet t-shirt contestant." Jake groaned. "It was just a joke." Claire crossed her arms, her grin wide. "A joke? Honey, you just gave me the highlight of my week. I needed this laugh more than you know." From behind Claire, Whiskers, their overly curious cat, sauntered into the room, his ears perked at the commotion. The damp floor beneath the door was too intriguing to ignore. Before either of them could react, Whiskers slipped and tumbled straight into the puddle. The cat let out an indignant yell, scrambling out of the water and straight into the bucket, which had fallen nearby. The bucket landed on Whiskers' head, twisting slightly so that the mop still inside it flopped down like a makeshift wig. Claire doubled over, laughing so hard she could barely stand. "Oh my God! Whiskers looks like he just stepped out of a bad drag show." Jake tried to grab the bucket from the furious cat, but Whiskers, still panicking, shot across the room. In his attempt to flee, he leaped onto a side table, knocking over a decorative vase. The vase shattered into pieces, each shard adding insult to the watery injury. "Great!" Jake muttered, throwing his hands up. "Now I'm wet. Whiskers looks like an extra from a freak show, and Dad's going to kill me about the vase." Claire waved him off, tears streaming down her face from laughter. "Forget the vase. This is comedy gold. If I had my phone, I'd be posting this disaster in real time." Jake narrowed his eyes at her. "You're taking way too much joy in this." Claire smirked, her laughter subsiding just enough to speak. "Oh, sweetie, when you tried to prank someone in their underwear and failed this spectacularly, you have to own the consequences. Consider this your rite of passage." "Rite of passage?" Jake spluttered. "More like a public execution." Claire winked at him. "Don't be such a baby. Besides, now you've got a great story to tell your friends. Or at least the ones who won't judge you for being outsmarted by a bucket and a cat." Whiskers, meanwhile, had climbed onto the couch, the mop still perched atop his head. Claire pointed, her laughter starting anew. And the winner of tonight's talent show is Whiskers for his portrayal of a drowned Broadway diva. Jake finally cracked a reluctant smile, shaking his head as water continued to drip onto the floor. Next time, I'm pranking Dad. Good luck with that, Claire said, her grin mischievous. You think I'm bad? He'll make you wish you stuck to cats and buckets. As Jake grabbed a towel to dry off, Claire sauntered back to the couch, plopping down next to Whiskers. The cat glared at her, as if blaming her for his newfound misfortune, while she reached out to adjust his wig. Cheer up, kid, Claire said, throwing a pillow at Jake. Life's about learning from your mistakes. And you, my dear stepson, just gave me a lesson I'll never forget. Jake sat, drenched and defeated, on the floor, the remnants of his prank scattered around him like a crime scene. He was trying to wring out his shirt, but it wasn't helping. His entire body was cold, and every time he moved, water splashed onto the carpet, making his situation worse. Claire was still cackling on the couch, her eyes glinting with mischief as she wiped away tears from the absurdity of it all. Really, Jake? Claire finally managed, her voice still thick with laughter. You couldn't even get that right? Jake shot her a glare, but it was hard to be mad when she looked so entertained. I swear, it was supposed to be a harmless prank. Just a little water to catch you off guard. Harmless? That wasn't harmless. That was a full-on disaster. You've soaked yourself, drenched the cat, and... She burst into another fit of laughter. And now Whiskers is officially the diva of this house, in case you missed that. Jake glanced over at the cat, who was still sitting on the couch, looking like an angry little mop with a wig. The absurdity of it all finally broke through his embarrassment, and he let out a reluctant chuckle. All right, fine. Maybe it wasn't my best work. Not your best work? You've just rewritten the definition of epic fail, sweetie. Claire's voice was teasing, but there was something about the way she said it that made Jake feel like he had somehow earned her approval, despite everything. The tension between them had shifted from awkwardness to something else, something lighter. Claire leaned back on the couch, still grinning. You know, if you'd aimed that water a little better, I might have been impressed. But this was just too easy. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, well, at least I know I won't be trying that again anytime soon. Claire raised an eyebrow. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure. You'll be back at it, won't you? I know you're not one to quit after one failure. He shot her a mock glare. What? You think I'm some kind of glutton for punishment? Claire's grin widened. Oh, absolutely. You tried to prank me, and now you're getting the full experience of what happens when a prank goes sideways. Trust me, next time you'll think twice. Jake shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Yeah, sure. Like I could ever prank you again without thinking you're going to get me back even worse. Me? Claire raised an eyebrow in mock innocence. Oh, honey, I'm not the one to get back. You're the one who has to answer to your own idiocy. Jake rolled his eyes, but a nervous chuckle escaped his lips. So what, you're just gonna keep laughing at me now? Claire paused, considering him. Oh, I'll laugh, sure. But I'll also tell you that this whole thing has made my day. Honestly, Jake, you need to lighten up. This kind of stuff happens all the time, especially with pranks. You think this happens all the time? Jake asked, incredulous. Claire nodded. Oh, yeah? The first time I tried to prank someone, I ended up falling into a fountain and looking like a wet rat for hours. Not to mention the fact that my dog had a field day with the aftermath. You think this was bad? You don't even want to know what I've been through. Jake couldn't help it. He laughed. Wait, you seriously fell into a fountain? Claire shrugged. What can I say? It wasn't my finest moment, but it was definitely entertaining for everyone around me. You'd think I'd learn, but nope. I still keep trying. You're just a prank junkie, aren't you? Jake teased. I like to call it funny but humiliating moments in my life, but yeah, I guess you could say that. Claire grinned, leaning back into the couch. You should try it sometime. You know, just embrace the chaos. Jake snorted. I think I'll pass, thanks. I've had enough chaos for one day. Are you sure? Claire said, her voice dripping with playful challenge. Because you've got potential. I can see it in you. You could be the next big prankster in this house. Jake shook his head, half smiling, half grimacing. No thanks. I'll stick to harmless stuff, like hiding the remote or something. Oh, come on, that's so boring, Claire teased. Where's the fun in that? You have to go big or go home, buddy. Jake eyed her skeptically. I'm pretty sure you just like watching me make a fool of myself. Claire leaned forward, her expression suddenly serious. Okay, maybe a little. But honestly, Jake, pranks don't always have to be about humiliation. They can be a way to make someone laugh, to surprise them, to break the ice when things get awkward. Jake raised an eyebrow. So you're telling me that I could have made you laugh without soaking myself in water? Exactly, Claire said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. You just need to work on your timing. If you'd been more subtle, I might have been impressed. But no, you went all in with the bucket. Classic rookie mistake. Jake laughed, shaking his head. You're really enjoying this, aren't you? Oh, absolutely, Claire replied, her tone light and playful. But I'm also saying, next time, maybe try something a little more clever. I'll be watching. Jake gave her a mock salute. I'll try to keep my pranks more refined. Good. Otherwise, Whiskers and I might just team up to take you down next time. Please don't, Jake muttered, looking at the cat, who was still wearing the mop wig with an expression of pure disdain. I've had enough embarrassment for one day. Claire's laughter rang out again, echoing through the house. Oh, don't worry, Jake. You'll be fine. But trust me, next time, you'll think twice before trying to prank me again. And with that, Jake knew he had just walked into a whole new world of pranking. One where he was the punchline, and Claire was the undisputed queen of comedic revenge. Jake sat on the couch, still soaked, staring down at his phone, trying to block out Claire's relentless teasing. She, on the other hand, had finally calmed down from her laughter fit, but the smirk never left her face. Every now and then, she'd glance at him, as if reliving the disaster in her head, and she'd let out another giggle. I swear, Jake, I've seen better pranks from toddlers, Claire said, breaking the silence. Jake groaned, running his fingers through his damp hair. I get it, all right? It was a failure. You don't have to rub it in. Rubbing it in? Oh no, I'm just making sure you learned something from this, Claire said, clearly enjoying her role as the lesson giver. Next time, when you try to prank me, remember, timing is everything. And also, don't underestimate me. Jake shot her a sideways glance. You're saying that like I'd even dare try again. Oh, I can see it in your eyes. You'll try again, I'm sure of it. But next time, it'll be better. More subtle. You know, like a ninja. Jake raised an eyebrow. A ninja? What, like sneak into your room in the middle of the night and pour cold water on you in your sleep? Claire snickered. That's a good idea, but you'll need to work on your stealth first. You're way too loud when you tiptoe. Jake laughed despite himself. I don't even know why I bother. You're impossible to prank. Impossible? Me? Oh, sweetie, you just need to find the right approach. But hey, don't worry, I'm happy to teach you. It's not like you're going to learn anything from your own mistakes. Jake looked over at her, crossing his arms. Oh, really? What are you gonna teach me? The art of prank revenge? Exactly, Claire said, her voice dripping with mock sincerity. You're not the only one who can dish out a good prank. I just know how to make it land without looking like a total disaster. Uh-huh. And how exactly do you pull that off? Jake asked, more out of curiosity than anything else. Claire leaned back, folding her arms behind her head. Simple. You've got to mix it up. A prank isn't just about embarrassing someone. It's about timing, surprise, and the art of making the victim think they're in control right up until the moment they're not. Jake stared at her, trying to follow her explanation. So, you're saying you trick them into thinking they're winning, and then, boom, the prank happens? Claire snapped her fingers. Exactly. It's like a dance. They think they're leading, but you're actually the one pulling the strings. And when it's done right, it's not just funny, it's art. Jake couldn't help but smirk. Art, huh? You're really selling this whole prank thing like it's a masterpiece. Trust me, it is, Claire said, a knowing look in her eyes. You'll see one day. But I'll give you a little lesson right now. You need to be sneaky. Plan your pranks carefully. Make sure your target never sees it coming. Jake snorted. Yeah, well, considering how my last prank went, I'm not sure I'm ready for a masterpiece just yet. Claire chuckled, obviously enjoying his discomfort. Don't worry. You've got potential. I'm just helping you realize it. But just know, once you start, you can't stop. Pranking is addictive. I'll take your word for it, Jake muttered. Claire leaned forward, her eyes narrowing with mischief. Don't worry. When you're ready, I'll be here to guide you. I'll even give you a few pointers, so you don't end up looking like a wet puppy again. Thanks for the offer, but I think I'll pass, Jake said, his tone playful but defensive. You're just enjoying this too much. Oh, I absolutely am, Claire said with a grin, her tone teasing. But don't worry, I'm not going to prank you back yet. Yet? Jake repeated, suddenly wary. Claire shrugged innocently. I'm just saying, when you least expect it, I'll get you back for the prank. It's just how these things work. Yeah, well, I'm not looking forward to it, Jake muttered, knowing full well that Claire would probably make sure whatever prank she pulled off would be even worse than the water disaster. Claire grinned at him. You should be. This is going to be fun. And I'm going to make sure it's unforgettable. Jake's eyes widened slightly at her ominous tone, and he instinctively scooted a little further away from her on the couch. Okay. I'm officially on edge now. Claire laughed. Good. You should be. It's all part of the process. They fell into a comfortable silence after that, the tension between them easing as Jake dried off more thoroughly. The cat, still wearing the mop wig, had made himself comfortable on Claire's lap, completely oblivious to the chaos he'd caused. Every now and then, Jake would glance at Claire, who looked as if she were plotting something, and he would feel a flicker of apprehension. But deep down, despite the embarrassment, Jake knew this moment would be something he'd remember for a long time. Even though the prank had backfired spectacularly, it had been a shared experience that, oddly enough, brought him closer to Claire. In some twisted way, he almost couldn't wait to see what she'd come up with next. And as the evening wore on, with Claire still chuckling occasionally and Jake trying to calm his nerves, he realized that he was probably going to need to step up his game if he ever wanted to get her back. The challenge was on, and now, more than ever, Jake understood just how far Claire was willing to go to make sure the prank war was anything but boring. The following days after the prank disaster were filled with a strange mix of quiet anticipation and tension. Jake tried to go about his routine, but everywhere he looked, there seemed to be a reminder of Claire's victory. It wasn't just the wet clothes that still hadn't dried properly. It was the lingering feeling that something was off, like a trap waiting to snap shut. He could tell that Claire was enjoying the aftermath more than he was, and it only made him more determined to prove that he wasn't going to just let her have the last laugh. One afternoon, after a long day at work, Jake walked in to find Claire lounging on the couch again. This time, she wasn't wearing her usual playful grin, but he could still feel her eyes tracking him, as if she were waiting for him to make the first move. He hesitated for a moment before sitting down next to her, trying to act casual. So, what's the plan today? Claire glanced at him, her lips curling into that all-knowing smirk. What do you mean, what's the plan? Are you suggesting I've got something planned? Jake raised an eyebrow, half amused, half nervous. I don't know. Do you? Claire shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe. But then again, I'm not the one who's been plotting, am I? Jake's heart skipped a beat. You mean you're not going to get me back for the prank? Not yet, at least. She chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down his spine. Oh, don't worry. It's coming. I'd just like to let you stew for a little while first. Builds character, don't you think? Jake gritted his teeth but tried to keep his composure. Yeah, well, I've been stewing plenty. You know, thinking about how I'm gonna get you back. Claire looked at him, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Oh, really? You think you can prank me now? After that epic disaster of yours? Jake leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. Trust me, Claire. You won't see it coming. She raised an eyebrow. Is that so? I'll believe it when I see it. Jake grinned, the first spark of hope lighting up inside him. He was sick of being the punchline. He was going to plan something so clever, so perfectly executed, that it would leave Claire speechless. No more water, no more mess. It would be clean, precise, and above all, utterly unexpected. The next few days went by in a blur of planning and preparation. Jake was meticulous. He spent his time studying Claire's habits, noting when she was most vulnerable, when she let her guard down. He was determined to make this next move a strategic masterpiece. He even asked around, getting some input from friends, who were surprisingly enthusiastic about the idea. Everyone loved a good prank war. Finally, the day came. Jake was ready. He had set up his plan with precision. Claire had gone out to run errands, and he knew she wouldn't be back for a while. Jake took the opportunity to execute his idea. He carefully placed a series of small, inconspicuous traps throughout the house. Nothing crazy, just little surprises designed to catch her off guard. There was no water, no mess. Everything was calculated. If she fell for this, she'd have no choice but to admit it was genius. He even rigged the kitchen, setting up an innocent-looking bag of chips on the counter. All it took was a slight movement, a pressure on the bag, and the whole thing would spring into action. It was the perfect distraction. When Claire walked in later that afternoon, Jake could barely contain his excitement. He had to act casual, like he wasn't the one who'd been orchestrating this whole thing. Hey! Claire greeted him, not yet noticing anything out of the ordinary. Hey! Jake replied, trying to hide the grin spreading across his face. He could feel the tension building, but he kept his composure. How was your errand run? Same old, she said, dropping her purse on the table. Nothing exciting. What's up with you? Oh, nothing much. Just chilling, Jake said nonchalantly. Hey, I'm starving. Want some chips? He gestured toward the bag, but Claire barely glanced at it. I'm fine. I'll grab a snack in a bit. Jake smiled, knowing it was only a matter of time. He didn't need her to fall for the first trap immediately. That would come later. For now, he had to keep her distracted, keep her engaged in conversations so she wouldn't suspect anything. As the day wore on, Jake waited. His heart raced as he watched Claire, the tension palpable. He could feel the anticipation, the way the prank hung in the air like a live wire. This was it. Then, Claire walked into the kitchen, and Jake knew she was getting close to the trap. He watched her approach the counter, seemingly oblivious to the subtle string he had attached to the chips bag. She reached for the bag and, without thinking, pulled on it. Everything happened in an instant. The chips bag released, triggering the domino effect of his carefully planned traps. First, the chips spilled everywhere, startling her, and then the sound of a whoopee cushion bursting echoed through the house, making her jump. Claire froze, her eyes wide in surprise. Then, slowly, she turned to look at Jake, who was trying his hardest not to burst into laughter. What the hell was that? She asked, clearly thrown off guard. Jake couldn't help himself. He burst out laughing. Gotcha! For a moment, Claire just stood there, blinking in disbelief. Then, she crossed her arms and gave him a hard stare. You really thought that would be enough? Jake's laughter died down a bit, but he still felt a surge of pride. Come on, that was perfect! You didn't even see it coming. Claire rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a small smile. Okay, fine, you got me. But don't get too cocky. You still have a lot to learn. Jake leaned back, feeling a rush of victory. Yeah, well, I think I'm finally on your level. Claire gave him a teasing smile, clearly impressed despite herself. Maybe, but let's just see if you can keep it up. I'm not going down that easily. The game was on. Jake knew that this prank war was far from over, but for the first time in a while, he felt like he had the upper hand.